All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Maggie Keene. I lead our strategy team over here at MyCNA Jobs. And I'm so excited to welcome everyone to our latest Data Packed webinar. Really looking forward to what's in store today. Before we dive in, a few housekeeping details. We had well over 1,000 people registered to join us for our conversation here today. So we have kept everybody on mute, but if you have a question burning on your mind during today's session, please do go ahead and type that in through GoToWebinar. For today's session in particular, we've carved out some time specifically for Q&A with these industry experts. So I will make an effort to get to as many of those as I can at the end of today's conversation. All right, now let's dive into the reason everybody's on the line today. So I'm personally excited to have the opportunity to both introduce and moderate a conversation between 4 home care industry leaders. So for today's Power Hour, we wanted to bring together experts in home care, talking about recruitment, sales and marketing, operations, and legal and regulatory environment. So the next hour is really going to be filled with new thinking on where the puck is headed as we go into 2019. So the goal today is for everybody on the line to walk away with some actionable strategies and insights and new thinking as we head into the new year. So let me start by sharing an overview of what to expect from today's conversation. So to start, we're going to go through some key questions that were submitted. So some of the folks on the line today sent us some questions they wanted to hear, what these experts thought and where the puck was heading in 2019. Then we're going to go through a lightning round of questions. Each of the experts on the line is going to have a minute or less, and they're going to give their take on 2019 and kind of on their corner of the world. And then we're going to connect everybody on the line to some additional resources. So each of these 4 individuals is really experts in home care, but again, bringing their own unique take and their own unique resources on the space. And then we're going to open it up, like I mentioned, for some really specific Q&A. So please, everybody on the line, we already have some questions, if you can believe it, that folks are typing in. So we'll absolutely leave some time here at the end to answer those. So to start, I want to introduce who we have on the line today. These are names many of you are familiar with. Many of you have probably seen these folks speak at conferences across the country. You've joined webinars with these voices before, so they won't be new to you, but really excited to hear their take. So we're going to start with our own CEO and founder over here at MyCNA Jobs, Brandy Kurtyka. So Brandy really brings a front row seat perspective into the caregiver market, looking at labor trends and seeing really what works and what doesn't work across thousands of agencies who are battling it out for the best talent. We're also joined by Angela Spinola from Littler. Angela brings nearly 20 years of experience as an attorney specializing in the home care industry and really focus on helping you navigate the labor and employment issues in the complex world of compliance. Now, Aaron Markham is the founder and chairman of Home Care Paulson with nearly 2 decades of experience in home care. Aaron's built a very successful agency from the ground up, created the largest national study on the home care industry, and founded Home Care Pulse. We're joined by Eric, the CEO of Home Care Pulse. Eric is an exceptional strategic planner, and he brings over 6 years of industry experience, as well as 18 years covering sales, marketing, customer support, and operations. So I'm personally excited to have the opportunity to moderate today's conversation and bring all of these experts here together. So get your pens and your paper out here. We're recording today's session, but I'm sure they'll have some great insights to share with you. So we're going to start off by asking our first question. And for this question, we're going to go through each of today's experts in the order that they're on here today, and go ahead and let us know your thought in a minute or less. What is the biggest challenge facing home care owners this year? So we'll go ahead and start with you, Brandy.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Maggie, for pulling all of this together, and thank you to everyone on the line for joining us. You know, I think the biggest challenge, yet the biggest opportunity is recruitment. There's not an endless supply of new caregivers, and everyone on the line is probably feeling the pains of the caregiver shortage. It's a real thing, and it's a real thing that we're all going through together now. We also know there's not enough people fundamentally coming into the profession. We're seeing caregivers leaving the industry for jobs in retail, fast food. We see companies like Starbucks and Amazon luring care talent away with more pay and benefits. I think home care is faced with a lot of challenges here. And we know that many agencies run fairly lean, and they're in a position where they need to not only get more competitive, but do it fast and do it profitably in a market with a severe labor shortage.
Absolutely. And what's your take on this question, Aaron?
Just to add to it, I agree 100% with what Brandy has said. In fact, the data says, the number one threat to our industry is by far caregiver shortages, which ties right into recruitment. And I'm just going to add to that is that the greatest challenge is competition when it comes to recruitment, when it comes to just doing a better job than your neighbor, and to understand what your competition is doing so you know how to compete. And your competition, just like Brandy said, is no longer just the home care providers. It's Amazon and others who are competing. And we're going to talk about that later on in this webinar as far as how to compete with the Amazons of the world, but really understanding, researching your competition so that you can face that challenge, because that's along with recruitment, it's competing on that recruitment. It's going head to head with those folks and making sure that you're getting the right caregivers for your agency.
Absolutely. And Angela, what's your take?
I definitely agree with everything that has been said so far. I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle and talk about state law compliance. As a lawyer, I've got to talk about that. I think that the issue that we are seeing in today's world with such a gridlock in Congress and the inability to pass any type of federal legislation, what we've seen is states have really picked it up and started to legislate for their folks that live in their states, and not only at a state level, but also at a county level, a city level. And I think that makes it very difficult, particularly for the national employer, to keep up with all of the paid sick leave laws and domestic worker bill of rights and predictive scheduling laws. It's a constant myriad of laws and constant changes, and I think that just makes it extremely difficult for a provider to stay on top of it.
Absolutely. And Eric, what's your take?
I would have to agree, ditto with what's been said. Not only are we seeing severe shortages in the number of caregivers in the industry, standing out from the competition, legal and political issues that are affecting us at both a federal and a state level. I would say all of those combined, I guess to summarize it, would be you need to know how to differentiate yourself. How do you stand out from the competition? And I say that both from a client perspective as well as from a caregiver perspective. The industry is growing so rapidly right now, 51% growth over the last 5 years. But as has been said, from a caregiver perspective, this issue of shortages is just tremendous. Almost double, agencies have said over the last 5 years that almost double the threat caregiver shortages are today than what it was just 5 years ago. And so how do you differentiate yourself? How do you step away from the competition and allow consumers and caregivers to find your agency? I think that's one of the biggest threats we'll face this year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. And this is a question that we hear regularly. And so I was really looking forward to get everybody's take on this one. So for the next 4 questions, each of the experts is going to give us their take on one of these questions. And so we're going to start with a question here for you, Aaron, at Home Care Pulse. So what does an agency that is well poised to grow revenue in 2019 look like? What does that agency look like?
I think geographically this may change, but I tried to really target, 3 major strengths that these agencies, these successful agencies who are really growing their revenue have, and what really sets them apart. We get so hung up on turnover and avoiding turnover, and Home Care Pulse, we've beat that drum over the course of several years. But I'm learning as I look at the information and the data that's we're always going to have turnover. It's just the nature of the beast. And so how do we handle that turnover is more important. And one of the things I think that really sets an agency apart and helps them grow to the next level, and will be for 2019, is their ability to onboard in that first 90 days. That's number one, is how quickly can they train and get these caregivers through their system so that they're confident and they're working their first shift as soon as possible. Because again, turnover is going to happen, and the sooner you can get them comfortable working in with a new client, the better poised you will be as an agency for 2019. If you have that process in place, and it's really like clockwork. Every week you're hiring, every week you're looking for new caregivers, so that you can handle that turnover. Because if you have a 60% turnover, your onboarding process becomes all that more important to be able to handle that and manage that the best. So that's number one. Number two, right people, right seats. Really, really important. As we look at the information, we measure the satisfaction of thousands of caregivers and thousands of clients throughout the country. We work with these home care providers measuring that satisfaction. And the office staff is usually the point of pain for a lot of these clients and caregivers. And it really affects the whole experience. So really focusing on getting the right people in the right seats for 2019. You got to have the right care coordinators, the right office staff, the right director, whatever it may be. One person can send the client experience going downwards. So really important, especially if you want referrals. And that's the third thing, is client referrals. Focusing on the client experience, their satisfaction, how happy they are with services, extremely important. And if you want to build a business based upon referrals and say, hey, my clients are my number one referral source, then I think you should really focus on it, build a campaign around it, treat it like its own marketing budget, marketing strategy just on clients. So those are the three areas I would focus on and if you want to grow revenue in 2019.
That's fantastic, Aaron. I'm taking notes as we go through this webinar, but genuinely, I think that concept, right, of right people, right seats is something that I think a lot of agencies, looking at that from a caregiver perspective, but talking about what does your office staff look like, I think that's incredible. So thank you for that. Now our next question, guided at Angelo. So what does the legal landscape look like next year? I know a lot of people wanted to know about this in particular. So what do we need to worry about, and what do we have to celebrate as we head into 2019?
Very good. And let me start by saying, when I heard that I could only talk for 3 minutes, I nearly had a heart attack. I don't know that I've ever just spoken for 3 minutes on anything in my entire life. So I will try to make this high level and concise. We'll start with, we know that the salary level for exempt employees is going to increase. The Department of Labor is going to increase those salary levels. You all may remember that the initial increase was supposed to be $47,000 and change with the Obama administration. We litigated over that and had success. Now there's a new proposal. It hasn't been announced yet, but the suspicion is that the number will probably be something like $33,000, $35,000. So for your exempt office staff, for example, I don't think it's going to greatly impact skilled clinicians, but those types that can be treated as exempt, that will be the minimum threshold. You can always treat an exempt person as non-exempt and pay them overtime, but that's what we think will happen. That will probably be towards the end of the year with the announcement of the proposal towards the beginning of the year. What I also expect to see is increased Department of Labor activity. We've seen a real spike in U.S. Department of Labor lawsuits, and I think that's a signal that the Department of Labor does not think that the home care industry is compliant enough. Another one that has been very, very much on the radar in the last several months is an increase in union activity, particularly the SEIU, but others as well, looking to unionize the home care industry. And I think we're really going to see a lot of activity in 19 on that. And there's been a lot of our clients that have been working on preparations for that, particularly in California. Talk about that a little bit more later. Some specific claims that we're seeing, ADA accommodation claims related to website compliance, and this is the visually impaired making a claim that the website for home care providers is not adequate for them to seek services. So we're seeing that claim filed quite a bit. Predictive scheduling, I think we're going to see a lot on that, and that's the idea of having a schedule that's predetermined for caregivers, which is next to impossible, and there being premium costs. If the schedule changes, we're seeing more and more of those kind of laws and therefore claims, and rate manipulation claims, particularly around live-in care and the idea of a rate changing, pay changing as a result of the number of hours the caregiver works, as opposed to for different types of work. So the other thing that I would say as far as what we're excited about, certainly the Supreme Court decision endorsing the ability to use arbitration agreements with class action waivers. That is so significant. The class action lawsuit is one of the biggest threats to home care, and it's a very, very common kind of lawsuit, and these agreements are helping to prevent those class actions and just individual litigations in arbitration. That's great. And then lastly, coalition building. I think as these threats and these regulations and some of these things are happening, particularly from a union perspective, and some of the laws that are coming down the pike, we're seeing home care really unite in an unprecedented way to defend themselves, to respond to some of the challenges that we're seeing. I love seeing everybody playing well in the sandbox. So that's a wonderful thing.
It's fantastic, Angela. I know that we really value your input here, and so do a lot of the folks on the line. And as you look at 2019, I think you talked about this at the beginning. There's starting to be this big delineation between things we're seeing on a state level and then activity at a federal level. So I think that's incredibly. I'm interested to hear more as we head into the lightning round here. So that's helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Eric here, I am really excited to hear your take on this, Eric. This is a question I was looking forward to hearing about. So with the expansion of technology in home care, right, we see this, how can agencies leverage that to stay ahead in 2019?
Yeah, that's a great question, Maggie. And just before I go on, just adding to what has been said by Aaron with the onboarding, I couldn't agree more. We hear about that all the time, the importance of onboarding caregivers. In fact, I think, Aaron, if I'm not mistaken, it's over 50% of turnover takes place in the first 90 days of a caregiver's life with an agency, and so that onboarding process is key.
Right.
But in terms of the technology side of things, it's an interesting world we live in. The technology we have in our cell phones today, in many cases, is multiples of more computing power than the computers used to launch the first spaceships into outer space. And technology just continues to grow more and more rapidly all the time. And there's so many things that can be impacted with technology, whether it's your scheduling software and machine learning that some of these companies are starting to use and apply. But from our perspective, I think one of the greatest things we have to look at from technology is how does it get your agency found? And I want to go back to, again, the use of the internet. As Aaron mentioned before, one of the top recruitment sources still is and can be your very own clients. But that's changing rapidly. 5 years ago, when we surveyed the industry on what are some of the top consumer marketing sources, only 5 of those 10 had to do anything with technology, meaning the internet. And last year, 8 of the top 10 consumer marketing sources were all internet-based. As these typical adult daughters are becoming more and more tech savvy, they're looking for quality care for their loved ones, they're really going to the internet to do their initial homework, their initial research. Some statistics I read the other day said something along the lines of 97% of consumers read online reviews before making any type of a buying decision. And that if you have just one negative review, that will limit the opportunity to provide service by 22% with one negative review, and 3 negative reviews, consumers are 59% less likely to purchase your product with 3 negative reviews. And so this whole concept of technology to vet out a home care company, reading those reviews online, being found online, what is the message that you're sharing? I just think we need to pay a lot of attention to that, and find out how can we how can we tap into our clients and especially into our caregivers and to gather the feedback, the experience they've had with working with those home care companies. It's going to be published out there. What's the most effective and efficient way to gather those positive comments, to get those out online so that your home care agency can be discovered?
That's fantastic, Eric. And I know you guys, as experts in that space, see this from a really unique corner of the market. So I appreciate that feedback. And again, excited to hear what you guys think as we head into the rest of the webinar. Before I go into the next question here, I do want to let everybody know on the line, we've got a couple people asked, the recording will be made available. So we'll make that available here. You'll get an email with a link to download that. So I know a lot of folks were interested in that. So, all right, wonderful. So we're going to head into our next question here for Brandy over here at My CNA Jobs. Where do you think the puck is heading in caregiver recruitment? And what companies will win and lose?
Thanks, Maggie. So I think there's a widening of the gap happening in home care of companies that are going to take this shortage and come out on top, and companies that are going to quickly start losing business because they can't keep up. I think companies that are going to win in 2019 are going to adapt. I think they're going to overhaul their recruitment processes and approach. They're going to try new things, invest in innovation, see what works. I think these winning companies are going to understand their, their core metrics driving recruitment. I think they're going to lead with data, not emotion. They'll know things like their cost per hire, how long it takes to get a caregiver through the hiring process, the percentage of interviews that turn into a hire, the percentage of applicants that turn into a hire. I think they'll know things like, why is a caregiver interested in joining your team and why is a caregiver not interested in joining your team? The agencies that I see winning in 2019 are also very connected to the people that are doing the recruitment. They know when the recruiter picks up the phone, what's happening. When a caregiver walks through the door, what's happening. When a caregiver leaves, what's happening. I also think they'll look at aligning whoever's touching the recruitment process in their office, align their comp against core metrics that are driving the business. And I think the neat thing is I genuinely believe that everyone on the line has an opportunity to be in this winning category this year. I don't think it's too late. But on the flip side of that, I'd say the bummer thing is I don't think all companies are going to adapt fast enough. And if agencies don't adapt fast enough, I think they're going to lose business this year. In a recent study that we just conducted, we learned that 60% of agency owners reported they have turned down a case within the past 30 days solely because they didn't have a caregiver to staff it. That is a lot of revenue that's walking out the door. And I'd say if this is you and you're sitting here and you don't know your cost per hire, and if you're not trying to need to recruit and you're not, measuring your recruiter on the core metrics driving business, you could get behind the agencies that are more focused on data and are focused on casting a wide net as it pertains to recruitment and keeping a continual pipeline of caregivers coming to the door this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that everybody on the line here also has some great tools and resources that can help you determine some of those metrics or help you get connected to the folks that can. So that's great, Brandy. All right, and now we're going to head into something I'm really looking forward to, which is our lightning round. So you can see there that the goal here is that each of the experts on the line here, over the next few slides, some of these are questions we got from folks that are joining us here today. Some of these came from the industry at large, but we're going to go through these questions, and each folks on the line here is going to be able to give us in 1 minute or less. I know Angela laughed about that before, but 1 minute or less here, their take, kind of their answer on where the puck is headed as we head into 2019. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our first question here. Our first lightning round question is with Amazon, retirement communities, hospital and health systems paying more wages and providing more benefits, how do you compete in this market? And we're actually going to go through the order that everyone's photo's on here. So we'll start with Brandy.
All right, thanks, Maggie. I love this question. What I think you need to do to compete with them is align your business to compete with them. You have to. You think about who a caregiver is. Caregivers are often women. They're often, single moms. And if you have others in your market that keep widening the gap on what you offer versus them, it's just harder to win. I think you need to take a look at from your market perspective and your local communities, and everyone's a little bit different that's on the line today. Who's in your market? What are they offering? You know, where do you win? Where do you lose? You know, where aren't you competitive? And actually take a look at that from a pay perspective, a benefits perspective, a time off, a flexibility perspective. We actually have a download that we use when we do different exercises with companies across the nation. That's like a competitive matrix. I actually think you should line up what you offer against other agencies in your market, other hospitals in your market, but also your Amazons, your grocery stores, your Starbucks, your, we call them like Peapods or Shipt, like your grocery delivery services. Like really understand, you know, where you're winning and where you're losing, so you have a map so you can figure out what specifically do I need to do to align my business to compete with them. You know, look where you're falling short and where you're winning. My other piece of advice here is to try to tap into folks that can do this job for reasons beyond a paycheck, right? Like you think about, you know, retirees or people that don't just need a job and want to get out of the house each week. You know, this is a crowd that's less likely to move for more money and benefits.
Great, Brandy. And we'll send out that matrix to everybody on the line after today's webinar as well. So Angela, what's your thought here?
Yeah, I think that this topic is so fascinating because there are so many care delivery models now. And I think it's not just Amazon and, you know, the gig economy. I think that the way that we do business is changing so rapidly. The law is having a hard time keeping up with it. And, you know, the consumer is demanding something different. So you heard Eric talk earlier about technology. I think that is going to be a huge factor. And we're going to see lots and lots of technology, both from the perspective of getting the right care to the client, right? And then also the tools that families are demanding now. And I think that some of the disruptors that have come into this market, like the, you know, care.com and the care links and those sort of models have really caused home care to really step up their game as far as what the offerings are. So we have been working on some really unique stuff from a retention standpoint with lots of our clients related to caregiver reward programs. I think that what Aaron said about speed to hire is so critical. Right, you know, the employee now is expecting you a job right away, and the easier you can make it, the better it's going to be for them. And then the last thing that I've been really interested to see, and clients are coming up with really creative ways to allow caregivers to level up through training programs, badge type systems. Better benefits, right? Benefits that accrue over time. The longer you're there, more PTO and some of the traditional things, but also some really non-traditional things to make the company more sticky to the individual. I want to be here, and the longer I'm here, the better my package looks.
Absolutely. Eric, what's your take on this?
You know, I have to agree completely with both with Brandy and Angelo. I think they've nailed it on the head. Just going back to what Brandy said about looking at who is in your marketplace to understand that competitive nature, that is vital because you have to be competitive. The data has shown that if you're paying below the median caregiver wage for your area, that your turnover rate is going to be significantly higher. Meaning those agencies who paid, you know, the 90th percentile, their caregivers in the 90th percentile, they had a retention rate, turnover rate that was almost half of what the industry average is. And so pay does make a difference, and you have to be aware of what's taking place in the industry. You have to understand who your caregivers are and what is their driving force and factor. In some research we've done this last year on caregivers, it was interesting to note that the number one reason why caregivers choose to work for a home care provider was because it was the first job they applied for, the first company to offer employment. So that speed with which you can recruit this individual from application to job. But more important than that, I think it has to come down that they want to feel part of something important. These caregivers are special people. They've got a unique skill set, a unique desire. They want to make a difference in people's lives. And in fact, in some research we did on recognition of caregivers, the number one way that caregivers like to be recognized had nothing to do with monetary compensation. It had to do with verbal recognition from their supervisor. And so understanding what these caregivers' needs are, helping them meet those needs, while at the same time being competitive from a compensation perspective. You got to know who your people are. It's not a cookie cutter option out there. You've got to be competitive and have your A game in all that you're doing right now.
Absolutely. And then Aaron, what's your take on this?
Just adding to that, and I'm going to keep mine under a minute. So really quick, communicate.
Little burn there. A little burn.
No, they did great. Y'all went over. Communicate the why. And I'm just going to say that is, and not just, and you've heard that from me before, but you got to have your communication pieces put together. How are you recruiting? How are you communicating? Why should someone want to work for you over in Amazon? You've got to know who your target audience is and get out there and communicate it and make that communication consistent across, your team, your job descriptions, your job ads. Everything has to communicate that why, so you're getting the right people in the door in the first place, and then the speed to hire is key.
Absolutely, and thank you, Aaron. No, absolutely, and I know that's a big focus of yours. I know when we've seen you speak and when we've talked about, your view on the market, and knowing that why is so key, I think, across the board. All right, our next lightning round question here. What's heating up? What should agencies keep their eye on next year? And I'll let you go ahead and start here, Aaron. What's your thought on where things are going next year?
There's a lot of different ways I could take this, but I'm going to just focus on one, and that's this consolidation that's happening. We're seeing that. We deal with over 1,600 providers who use our satisfaction program, and I talk to a lot of these providers, and there is consolidation happening, and not as much on the national level. I mean, that's happening, but a lot of the consolidation is regionally. And so you're going to see some of these really great operations that are coming together and forming quite a great force. And so those providers that aren't involved in that have to learn how to compete. And I know I've already mentioned this, but the competition and understanding your competition and setting yourself apart, understanding how to compete with some of these regional providers that are consolidating. They're getting really good at recruitment, and so you've got to be able to communicate who you are at your core to both your clients and your caregivers, and how you set yourself apart.
Absolutely. Angela, what's your take?
To look out for, I think the first one that I think you need to keep an eye on is the National Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, and this is a brand new announcement. I think it was made last week, and this is a proposed national. It's one of the federal legislative efforts that was really presented by the National Domestic Workers Alliance. And what this is, you may be familiar. There's 8 or 9 jurisdictions that currently have Domestic Worker Bill of Rights, which is basically creating more rights for the worker. Now there's an effort to have a national one that would apply in every state. The idea would be to raise wages and change working conditions. It has a built-in scheduling component, meal and rest breaks. So in other words, in states that there's not a requirement for meal and rest breaks, now there would be. It's got a safety element, retirement benefits, paid sick leave, a notice provision for live-in, so they wouldn't be at-will employees anymore. And there's even a request for panic buttons related to sexual harassment type claims. So it's a very robust proposed law. This is not a law; it's a proposed law that we're going to see introduced probably in January. So keep an eye on that and what happens there. The other one that I would identify is the caregiver disclosure Act issue in California. That's going to be a big deal. This is AB 2455. That's going to be a big deal nationally. And what that is a law that's supposed to go into effect July of next year that would require information about, personal information about the caregivers that are registered with the state to be provided to unions and to the public so that the unions can try to organize them. And there's a coalition forming on that issue in California. A lot of the national providers are very interested in that because if that goes through in California, it's likely that that's going to happen in other jurisdictions as well. And we're going to see more of this union organizing that I talked about earlier.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. And then Eric, what is your thought here?
I would have to agree with Angelo. And when it comes to changing political landscape that we're dealing with, I think that's going to be a big threat and an opportunity for those who can maneuver through and understand, as Aaron said, and being able to differentiate yourself and stand apart as you get through this political landscape. I also think there's, as Aaron mentioned a little bit, we're going to see a lot of this consolidation and strategic partnerships. In July of this year, Humana completed its acquisition of Kindred at Home for $4.1 billion. Comfort Care and Right at Home recently partnered with Kindred at Home. I think there's just going to be some consolidation, some strategic partnership, both at the provider level and also from a technology level. We saw ClearCare's acquisition of HomeTrack earlier this year. I think we're going to see some other consolidation in 2019 that's going to provide some interesting landscape in which to maneuver. I also would go along with the whole caregiver recruitment and retention perspective. Companies that can figure out how they can best get on top of this whole issue with the caregiver shortages, that's got to be key for the survival of your home care business.
Absolutely, Eric. And Brandy, what do you think is heating up and what should agencies keep their eye on next year?
Yeah, so I'm going to echo what Aaron and Eric just shared. We're seeing consolidation in the industry as well. We're seeing a lot of it from our, corner of the world from a recruitment perspective. I also think the new Medicare Advantage benefit, we have a question coming up on that in a minute, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but I think it's something absolutely to keep your eye on. I also think the industry now sees the importance and value of local home care agencies, and I think that's pretty cool. There's a lot of different models out there, but there's very much been a consensus, I think, of how good local is. But because of this, I now think there's a trend of companies that are coming in and trying to capitalize on those local relationships that agencies have spent so many years building with scare tactics. You can't do recruitment. You don't have the technology. You can't scale. In my humble opinion, I don't subscribe to that. I think agencies today have all the opportunity in the world to grow quickly if they focus on getting analytical and driving their recruitment with data in 2019.
Absolutely. All right, thank you. Now the next question here, and we've got 3 questions, everybody on the line, got 3 more questions here. We'll try to keep it under a minute each so that we can leave time. We've had some excellent questions come in already that I want to get to in the Q&A. So starting with Brandy here, what do agencies need to spend to compete on either marketing and or recruitment?
Thanks, Maggie. So in general, more agencies than not are reporting that they need more hires, right? We just ran a latest study. Majority of agencies are saying, I need more people. So in general, this means you're going to need to spend more than you're spending today on recruitment. And the amount you should spend on, on recruitment, I think can be calculated very simply. It goes back to data. What's your cost per hire times how many hires do you need? I think it's simple, and I think you let this be your guide, and you can back into what you should actually spend on recruitment. And I think it's different for everybody on the line. There are different geographies that have higher cost per hires than others. There are different companies that have lower and higher different cost per hires than others. And you need something different than your competitor, right? You might be sitting on the line today and you need 3 or 4 hires. You might be sitting on the line today and you need 10, 15, 20 more hires on a monthly basis. So I think it all boils down to your cost per hire and backing into your spend.
Fantastic. All right, Aaron, what's your take on this?
So I'm going to focus on the sales and marketing side. When we look at the leaders in the industry, those who are generating 2.8 or more in revenue, according to our study, is they're spending about 4 to 5% total, and that's I guess that's sales, marketing, recruiting on that about of their revenue. And I would recommend doing that pretty much for your sales and marketing, and then you've got to really measure each resource that you're spending. You have to really get good at measuring how well it's doing, and that's really important. And one of the great ways to do that, and I would do this by whatever you're spending marketing on, try to break it out, but what are your acquisition costs per resource? What on the client side, measure that acquisition cost. What's it costing you to invest in whatever it is, and divide that by the number of clients that you're receiving from that resource. And then you can do a general overall, how overall is my sales and marketing being spent? And you really need to be in the $500 to $700 per client acquisition range when it comes to your overall picture of sales and marketing. And sales and marketing includes any salaries that you are investing in for sales and marketing purposes would be included in that. Just to give you a hard dollar, in 2017, the average or the leaders median amount of dollars they spent on sales and marketing was $113,000. That's a hard number there to maybe go off of. And Eric may have some other data that he can share there as well. So.
Yeah, Eric, anything to add?
Yeah, just go along with what Aaron said. That 4 to 5% of what a leader's revenue is they're plowing back into their marketing efforts. I think that's a good benchmark. The industry as a whole was at about 2.5% for your marketing and recruitment efforts last year. And again, I think if you want to become like the leaders and have that size of a business, then you need to invest more into your recruitment and marketing efforts. But I want to focus on just a little bit different on this perspective and look at it. And I think Brandy mentioned this earlier about the caregiver and the shortages of caregivers. It's interesting to understand what is the lifetime value of a caregiver. Our research has shown that on average in 2017, the median caregiver would generate about $12,000 in revenue for your home care business per year. And so asking yourself, what do you need? What are you willing to invest in order to generate an extra $12,000 in revenue? If you want to grow your business from where it is today to, X percentage larger, how many more of these caregivers do you need to bring on? And as Brandy said, it's understanding your cost per hire. So definitely think we need to increase the spend on the marketing and recruitment side in 2019.
Absolutely. I know that's a data point that we come back to from your benchmarking study with a lot of our clients every single year as well. So 2 more questions here. First, what's something new and exciting that agencies should have on the radar this year? We'll go ahead and start with you, Angelo.
Great. So Brandy touched on this a little bit, the consolidation in the market. What I think that's exciting for our clients, because what we're seeing is to be attractive to some of these large plans, what we're seeing is a lot of consolidation where some of the bigger companies that maybe, let's say, primarily focus on skilled care have realized that we need the non-medical component in X jurisdictions or in these places to really be attractive and to provide the full continuum of services, right, to these clients across the life cycle of services. And that's really great, because you're just seeing these companies, small companies get bought up, and then you've got private equity coming into the mix, and that's been the case for the last several years. So that's wonderful. And one of the points I want to make about that is it is very important from a compliance perspective, because pay practice type issues are successor liability issues. So anybody who's interested in being eventually bought or invested in has to make sure that what they're doing is compliant, because certainly the buyer is going to be taking a close look at what you do. But I think that's a wonderful thing to see some of these folks, having an opportunity to work across the continuum.
Absolutely, Angelo, that's helpful. And Brandy, what do you think is new and exciting on agencies' radar for 2019?
Yeah, absolutely. So exciting. I think next few years, the labor market's going to be getting tighter. Y'all on the phone doing something about it now. I think by virtue of taking action and putting a game plan in place, you're going to get ahead, and that's exciting. From a My CNA job standpoint, we're working hard to arm you with even more data and more caregivers this year. We just announced earlier this week we're officially a job placement partner for the National American Red Cross. This means all of their CNAs across the country are contacting us to learn about the best companies to work for in their area. We know that not all caregivers are online, and we're committed to developing some really unique methods to tap into quality caregivers online and offline. And I think that's not just exciting for us, it's exciting for caregivers and exciting for everyone on the line to tap into more quality talent this year.
Absolutely. And Eric and Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Maggie, I think one of the key things that's exciting is this ability for online reputation management. How can you manage your reputation on the big World Wide Web? In the last year, we've seen a 50% increase in home care providers saying that they online reputation management is a key strategic opportunity for them going forward, which is really exciting. That's been complicated a little bit with Google's announcements a few months ago about review gating and only hand selecting those agents, those customers who are going to give you a positive review. Google's really cracking down on that. Yelp's already done that. Facebook will be doing that soon. So how are you really able to market your agency? Are you able to differentiate your agency online in 2019? I think it's going to be very, very exciting for the industry.
Absolutely. What
So
about
I'll just
you,
add
Aaron?
really quick, Maggie, is on top of what Eric is saying, is exciting for Home Care Pulse. We've got some partnerships and things that will be rolling out for 2019. I'm not going to say a whole lot more, but that will help agencies get found online even more. Our customers will really benefit from that. And some really exciting things that we're going to be doing over the next while to help really move that ball forward and do hopefully some great things with My CNA Jobs in 2019 as well. We'll have to partner on the caregiver side even more, but excited about that. And then one quick little gem, and it's an old gem, but one that's not being utilized, and the data's not lying. Bank trustees. Man, get a hold of those folks through your existing clients that are using trustees for their money. You will generate more revenue, and those who say it's a top referral source are telling us that's really a gem that's not being utilized by most of your competition. So if you want something to stand out, that's a great networking partner.
Absolutely. Well, let's definitely partner. And we love working with you guys, and we're really excited for what's ahead. I like the mysterious there. I'm not going to say too much, so we're excited for that. As I know.
Yeah, Eric would kill me if I said too much. So
I know. There you go. Keeping it on the down low. I like it.
Yeah, that's
absolutely,
right.
Absolutely. All right, last question before we head to the Q&A here. And this is a question that we had a lot of folks come in and ask us this. It's in our deck here for that very reason. So starting with Brandy, what do you think of the personal care Medicare Advantage benefit? How will it impact the industry?
So this new benefit makes me even more bullish on home care. Although there's been a bit of a lack of clear CMS guidance on the new benefits and a pretty short rollout, I know there are companies that are going to make waves with this in 2019. Personally, I think the bigger wave's probably coming in 2020, but the new benefit's amazing. It's going to bring more awareness to home care. I think it's going to help companies grow their business. I also think, though, it's going to come with some challenges. I view, shorter shift cases, the need for more caregivers. This is certainly a problem that we have our eye on, and we're committed to solving. And if Medicare Advantage is an area of focus for you, we want to talk. We're focused on solving it. I think it's very, very interesting.
And Angela, I know this is something that you particularly wanted to touch on here as well. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. I have not seen anything that has generated as much excitement in the home care world in recent times than this. Lots of calls about this, requests for updates, as Brandy just mentioned. There's not a lot of detail just yet. I expect to see some of that soon, but we know it's the idea of having supplemental benefits for patients with chronic care conditions, right? And the whole concept is to ultimately lower the healthcare costs by investing more on the non-medical side, where the caregiver has lots of access to the patient. So my expectation is that it will be a slow start, right? As plans, try to come into this market cautiously and try to figure out how to utilize the benefit. I have seen a lot of partnership work going on with respect to some of the larger systems getting ready for this, and I think the idea is being first to market and establishing those partnerships even before there's a clear definition of what's going to happen, so that they can be ready and be the first to market. I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have for the smaller mom and pop providers. I don't know that they're really going to be able to develop the partnerships to maximize the advantage, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Absolutely. And Aaron and Eric, what's your take on this? Go ahead and start with Aaron.
I'm taking a cautious approach. I wish we could get more of like Angelo said. There's not a lot out there that really tells us how this is going to take off. I would like to see more of these insurance providers on board with it. It's been I think they're kind of taking a wait and see approach. The other challenge, and I would just really cautious people, is that, and this is I'm putting on my home care owner hat from being a former home care owner. I really love private pay. I'm a fan of it. I think it's a way to grow your business. I would certainly caution everyone, and maybe I'm not necessarily a naysayer. I think it could be a great program. I just say be careful not to get too much of your revenue in that bucket, because that could change on a dime, and you just have to be careful. I would certainly embrace it. I would, as it's rolling out, and it's a good thing for your agency. But watch that revenue. Make sure that you're getting revenue from other buckets, and that would just be my caution as you move forward with this. Any government program is unpredictable, in my opinion. So that's my take.
And Aaron, I would agree with you on that. The people we're talking to are super excited. There's a lot of enthusiasm for this throughout the industry, but it is also a lot of unknown, a wait and see approach. Don't move too quickly, although there is, as Angela said, a first mover advantage in doing so. But I think overall it's going to have an increased focus on outcomes. What are the outcomes that we're seeing? And as we look at the other sister industries, if you will, that leads to more government regulation, and I think that is all in store, and that'll all be things we'll have to deal with over the coming years. But I think it's exciting. It's exciting that home care is getting the recognition that it deserves, and could be a game changer for some agencies that understand how to manage and maneuver the landscape.
Fantastic. Absolutely. All right. So we are going to head into one quick thing here before we head into the Q&A. We've had some awesome questions coming in here. Exciting to see a lot of folks on the line engaging here. So we'll get to as many of those as we can here in just a second. So first of all, I have a couple pages of notes on my desk. I'm sure everybody else does, wherever they're sitting at in the country today. Some really interesting takes on where things are headed in 2019. I'm sure many of you agree as well. If you want more of what you heard and what you saw here, if you want to connect with any of these experts, the next couple of slides are going to be your chance to do that. So there's lots of different ways that they can help you grow your business as we head into 2019, help you tackle some of these challenges that we know that are coming up, and take advantage of some of these exciting opportunities that we have as we head into 2019. So go ahead and start with you, Brandy.
All right, thanks, Maggie. She's going to go up and launch a poll here. And really what we're asking is, are you turning away cases? And if you're turning away cases or you're open to trying something new this year, we have a lot of different recruitment tools. We have a lot of ways that we can slice those tools to help you drive hires. By no means are we a silver bullet, but I think we have a lot to offer. And we really partner with our customers. We sit down, we figure out what your challenges are, and we'll help connect you to the best tools that we have. So if you're open to a conversation, if you want to learn more, you just need more caregivers, you can just indicate that you're open to a 10-minute meeting, and someone will get in touch to walk you through some various recruitment options to connect with more folks this year.
All right, excellent. I'll leave that open for just another second. It took a second to launch there. Love GoToWebinar. All right, fantastic. Okay, we'll go ahead and pass that over to Aaron and Eric. I know you have a poll that I'm launching here as well.
Go ahead, Eric. Is he there?
Yep, let me take myself off mute. Let me take myself off mute there. Okay. So we at HomeCare Pulse, we love to gather and analyze data. And today as a panel, we've shared with you some of the things that we feel are key for 2019. And we'd like to know what are your top priorities for 2019? Are you interested in caregiver training? Are you interested in improving your client and caregiver experience? We've talked about that a lot today with the caregivers and the shortages and turnover that we're experiencing in the industry. Are online reviews a focus for you? Are you focused on generating leads? Are you focused on moving to a new scheduling software? What is it that is your home care agency's top priority in 2019? We just love to gather that data, and then we'll be sharing some of this information in upcoming benchmarking studies and other releases that we have in 2019.
Fantastic. All right. And then lastly here, Angelo, I'll go ahead and launch your poll as well here.
Thank you. Yeah, so I work with a lot of the folks that are in attendance on this webinar, and you all know my platform. What I really try to focus on, I think, which is important for the entire industry, is compliance and trying to move the puck with respect to all the litigation that we're seeing to some other industry. So you all can help me to retire at an early age, early-ish. So that's what I want to. The takeaway here for you is, how do you feel about your compliance? Do you feel like you're in good shape if we've been through the compliance dance, or are you worried about some things? And if you are, we would love to help. My view is that a compliance dollar is like 10 litigation dollars. It's so easy to review your onboarding, to look at these things before they become a problem, and more we're getting companies that are being proactive about it, not waiting for the other shoe to drop to address these issues. So if that's you and you would like some help, let us know.
Fantastic. Okay, beautiful. So I know we're wrapping up here at the top of the hour. We had a ton of questions come through. So I'm going to go ahead, queued a few of these up already on our side, and I'm just going to go ahead and dive in and kind of direct them here based on the asks that have come through. So we had a couple people who just said, thanks for being on the line. So I appreciate that, absolutely. So there is going to be a recording here, as several of you mentioned and asked for, so that'll be coming your way shortly. So Mike on the line asked specifically, Eric, that you commented that the industry has grown 51% over the last 5 years. What does that growth, or that 51, represent?
Great question. From the 2018 home care benchmarking study, we went back and looked at the number of new agencies that have joined the industry over that time. And every year it's up and down a little bit based upon the participants of the study. But over the last 5 years, if you average those numbers out, there's been 51% increase, 51% more new providers who started their business over the last 5 years, which is a tremendous, for any industry to have 51% growth over 5 years is just amazing. And that results in increased competition in a marketplace that's already struggling to find sufficient caregivers to meet the demands, a growing elderly population with all of the baby boomers. It creates for an awesome opportunity for us to be in right now in the home care industry.
Absolutely. And then, Angela, I had a question for you. At what point can you safely take the caregiver off of your employment system if they have not taken on any clients? So safely meaning from them filing unemployment. And do you recommend any documentation here?
Yeah, so unemployment is going to depend on the state, and states have different requirements for how many hours somebody has to work to qualify for unemployment. What I would tell you is, if somebody's inactive, it's always a good idea to confirm with them that they are done with you, and that they've moved on, because resignation is one of the very helpful ways of establishing there's no unemployment claim. The other thing with respect to documentation is, the more clear your policies and expectations are, the more likely you are to actually win an unemployment claim. So if you can establish that somebody has violated a clear policy, for example, they knew about the policy and were terminated as a result of the policy and not for lack of work, you're going to have a much better opportunity to win some of these unemployment claims.
Fantastic. And then, Aaron, a question directed at you. By consolidation, do you mean co-ops? What do you mean by consolidation? How do you see the industry consolidating?
I had mentioned it's consolidating on a national level, but also more at the regional level, at least from our experience. And these are private, co-ops. That's growing for sure, and that's something has to be on our radar. Where we're seeing the most growth or most consolidation is regionally. Providers that are, anywhere between 5 and 15 million that are combining forces with a similar kind of type of provider, that are either acquiring or merging with their number one competition in the area. And so some of you have seen that, up there in Washington, there's a recent consolidation or a merger between two great companies, and seeing that back east with several. And we know that many are on the hunt, and meaning they're looking for companies who share their why, who are very similar to them in different regions. If they're operating in New Jersey, they're looking in Philadelphia. They want to keep kind of growing regionally and then expand from there, and we're seeing that more and more. I know of several companies that are in the $20 to $30 million range who are out now acquiring others. And so that's where, when I say consolidation, it's happening regionally, which I think provides a greater threat than if it was a national type situation. As regionally as that's the local level, and they're competing more aggressively at the local level. And so you just have to be aware of that, and know how to best communicate how you set yourself apart from that competition.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of our last questions here, and then I know we ran over here, so I want to get everybody back to their teams today. Somebody asked what the industry average cost per hire is, and I'm going to answer it, and then I'm going to have Aaron confirm that. This year it was $566, correct, Aaron?
That's correct. That's
all right,
correct.
Good. I passed my quiz there, but we at My CNA Jobs, we actually have a calculator that helps our clients go through and calculate that cost per hire, including all those pieces. We'll send that out after the webinar today. But we're seeing ranges anywhere from $150 to well into the thousands, and a lot of factors go into that. A lot of that boils down, though, to how effective you are in your recruitment process as well. So I think that's key. So there's some fantastic questions on here. I will get them to the experts that are on the line today. You'll hear back from them, I promise. Lots of folks thanking you guys for being on the line. So I'm going to go ahead and end today's session with a huge thank you to the four folks that we had join us today. Brandy, Aaron, Angelo, and Eric, I can't tell you how great it is to be able to moderate this and connect with you all today. We appreciate our opportunity to get these great insights out in front of the industry, and we're excited to see what 2019 holds for everybody on the line. So have a fantastic rest of your week, and happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks
everyone.
CNA Jobs, Maggie, Brandy, thank you.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.